Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. When I saw 5 cars and a self-declared HOA enforcement team marching up my driveway, I knew Karen Grabe had finally lost her mind. Armed with fake authority and a megaphone, she came to take my house. What she didn't know, 4 Marines were inside, and we were very ready. I was halfway to Richmond driving east on I-64 with a coffee in one hand and a rolled-up site plan in the passenger seat when my phone buzzed with a security alert from the house. I glanced at it, half expecting another deer tripping a motion sensor, but what I saw made my stomach drop. 5 cars, 15 people. A damn parade had assembled in front of my driveway, and at the center of it all stood the blonde-bobbed nightmare herself, Karen Grabe, president for life of the Harbor Pines Homeowners Association. Of course, she waited until I left town. That was her style. Passive-aggressive ambushes, ridiculous bylaws mailed in triplicate, notes folded and taped to my mailbox with Scotch tape like she was marking a crime scene. But this was bold even for her. 6 years ago, I bought my house for its privacy. Nestled among trees on the edge of the development, it sat just outside the HOA boundary. County lines and recorded plats made that fact very clear. From day one, Karen had insisted I was within the spirit of Harbor Pines, whatever the hell that meant, and tried everything to force me into her little suburban dictatorship. I ignored her, lawyered up, and won. Twice. And just last month, I told her very politely where she could shove her community aesthetic guidelines when she demanded I take down my Marine Corps flagpole because it detracted from the neighborhood harmony. Well, now the neighborhood harmony was screaming into a megaphone on my gravel driveway. The footage was crisp. Karen stood dead center, clutching a bright orange loudspeaker like a hostage negotiator, flanked by 3 guys in matching black community enforcement polos. They had tactical vests, batons, and even some Walmart-grade handcuffs dangling from their belts. Behind them were regular HOA volunteers, retirees mostly, wearing khakis and angry expressions like they were staging a coup at Costco. I hit play on the audio. "Miles Haggerton, this is your final warning," Karen shouted into the megaphone, her voice distorted but unmistakable. "You've ignored our notices, refused to meet our terms, and you continue to occupy property that rightfully belongs to the community. Come out now, or we will escalate." I pulled over on the shoulder, heart pounding, not out of fear, out of sheer disbelief. Back at the house, the one person Karen didn't expect to be inside was my younger brother Tyler, 34, former Marine Corps infantryman, and visiting for the week while waiting to start a new security contract overseas. Also in the house were 3 of his friends, all veterans, all the kind of guys who can clear a room with their presence alone. And Karen had just wandered into their nest, waving a stick. I tapped into the live feed. Tyler had clearly seen the circus. The porch camera showed him stepping outside slowly, wearing jeans, a gray t-shirt, and that casual war readiness he never quite took off. He held no weapons, made no sudden moves. His voice, through the porch mic, was calm and surgical. "This is private property," he said. "You're trespassing. I strongly suggest you leave." Karen took a dramatic step forward and raised her megaphone again. "Don't try to intimidate us, Mr. Hag." Tyler cut her off by simply raising one hand. He wasn't smiling. He didn't need to. He had the energy of a loaded weapon left on a table. "Just to be clear," he said, "this is not HOA land. There is no legal right-of-way, no easement, and definitely no authorization for your little parade. You're being recorded on 5 cameras, and I've already called the county sheriff." 2 of the community enforcement guys tried to play tough. They walked toward the side gate, which of course was locked, and began fiddling with the latch. One of them pulled out bolt cutters. The other said something that made me rewind the audio. "We have an enforcement order. Karen signed it. She's the HOA president. That's all the authority we need." I laughed in my truck. The level of stupidity was Olympic. Back on the feed, Tyler watched them from the porch without moving. "Cut that lock," he said, "and I'll consider it a hostile entry. That makes it federal, not local. You ready for that?" The guy holding the cutters paused. Karen, however, wasn't done. She shoved one of her faux rent-a-cops forward and yelled, "Go on, take control. He's threatening us." The guy hesitated. Then, in what might be the dumbest tactical choice of the decade, he stepped toward Tyler with a baton raised. The door behind Tyler opened. Out stepped Jason and Luis, both stocky, calm, and absolutely not to be trifled with. They didn't say a word. They didn't have to. It was 3 Marines on one side, a bunch of HOA cosplay mall cops on the other. The baton guy swung. Jason moved first, blocking the swing, grabbing the guy's wrist, twisting and sending him to the ground like a sack of potatoes. Tyler kicked the baton away and pointed at the porch camera. "You're all being recorded. Leave. Now." Then the chaos really started. Karen screamed, stumbled, and dropped to the grass like she'd been shot. "He hit me! They attacked us! I'm calling the police!" she shrieked. She was already dialing 911, fake tears streaming, eyes scanning for witnesses who might back her up. Behind her, one of the HOA women clutched her pearls. A guy with a camera phone yelled, "This is assault," without knowing who had hit whom. Inside the truck, I sat back and let out a breath. Karen had made a colossal mistake. She thought I was home. She thought we'd be scared. She didn't know who she was dealing with. And she definitely didn't know the sheriff already had standing instructions from me in case this HOA tried anything stupid again. I stayed on the highway shoulder, watching the chaos unfold in real time from 4 synced camera feeds. The porch cam, gate cam, driveway drone, and a wide-angle lens I'd mounted months ago on the second-story dormer, all beaming back the same absurd, escalating disaster. I wasn't even sure which part to focus on. Karen flopping around in the grass like she'd been tased, or the 2 HOA enforcers actively trying to dismantle my side gate with bolt cutters while shouting about imaginary paperwork. Tyler hadn't moved from the top step of the porch. The other guys, Jason, Luis, and Marcus, stood near him, relaxed but ready, hands open, eyes tracking the movement like they were back on a patrol in Fallujah. You could tell they were holding back, not out of fear, but out of discipline. These were men who had seen real violence, and what Karen had brought was just a suburban pantomime with delusions of force. But then it got worse. One of the enforcers managed to snap the latch. The gate groaned open. Tyler took 2 steps forward and raised his voice, just loud enough to carry over the driveway. "This is your final warning. Cross onto this property again, and you'll be committing felony trespass under Virginia Statute 38.283. This land is not governed by Harbor Pines. I have documentation. You've already been told. We've already called the sheriff. Back off." Of course, they didn't listen. The smaller of the 2, skinny guy, cargo pants, cheap tactical gloves, pointed a stubby finger at Tyler. Karen signed an emergency enforcement order. "This residence is now in violation of Section 5 of the Unified Community Conduct Code. You are resisting compliance." Tyler raised an eyebrow. "I didn't realize Monopoly made a paramilitary edition." The guy charged. To be fair, he tried. He really did. Got about 6 steps in before Marcus stepped off the porch like gravity didn't apply to him and caught the man with a clean redirect, just enough to spin him and drop him to the grass without injury. The guy landed with a wheeze, his walkie-talkie flying off and tumbling into the bushes. The second enforcer followed, yelling something about citizen's arrest and lunging at Jason with what looked like a zip tie. He didn't get far. Jason simply stepped aside, hooked his arm, and let momentum do the rest. The man tripped over his own feet and fell flat on his face. And stayed there. Luis picked up the walkie-talkie from the grass and calmly switched it off. "Who the hell trained these guys?" he muttered. Karen, seeing her security team in the dirt, lost her mind. She stumbled back to her feet with a wild screech, grabbed the megaphone, and aimed it at the porch like it was a weapon. "Police! Police! We need help! There are militants on the property. They've attacked us. They're armed. They're armed." That was the moment Tyler leaned into the camera and said, loud and clear, "For the record, we are unarmed. We are not initiating force. We are defending private property from unlawful intrusion." Behind Karen, several HOA members started to back away. You could see the doubt flickering across their faces. This wasn't the peaceful protest she'd promised. One of the elderly couples turned and walked briskly to their car. Another man was filming everything on his phone, not for evidence, but probably for YouTube. You could smell the panic starting to seep through the seams of their little show. Karen didn't stop. She flopped back to the lawn and began writhing again. "I've been hit! Call an ambulance! I think my arm's broken!" No one had touched her. Inside the house, Tyler walked to the kitchen, took a slow breath, and activated the emergency feed relay, a function I'd installed during a previous round of HOA harassment. The cameras were now uploading directly to a secure cloud with a time-stamped archive accessible to my attorney. Every face, every motion, every lie locked down. Then he pulled out his phone, called me again. "They're in full tilt, bro," he said. "We've got forced entry at the gate, 2 physical aggressors neutralized with minimum contact, Karen screaming assault, and I think she just licked the grass for dramatic effect. Sheriff en route. Already called. ETA was 25. That was 17 minutes ago. Should be soon. Any weapons? Nope. Just stupidity." Back on the feed, one of the HOA enforcers, the zip tie guy, tried to get up, realized Luis was still standing over him, and laid back down. Then, flashing lights. The first sheriff's cruiser rolled up the gravel path like Moses parting the HOA. 2 deputies stepped out, already wide-eyed at the circus in progress. Karen sprang to her feet like Lazarus and ran toward them, grabbing one by the vest and sobbing something about military men with weapons threatening civilians. The deputy glanced past her toward the porch, where Tyler stood with his hands open at his sides, calm as a Sunday sunrise. "I've got all the footage," he said, "and a fresh pot of coffee, if you want to sit down and watch." The deputies exchanged a look, and just like that, the scene shifted. The HOA mob stopped chanting. The enforcers pretended they hadn't just been belly-flopped into the dirt. Karen, still howling about trauma, realized no one was playing along. I put the truck in drive and merged back into traffic, heading home. I didn't know how deep Karen had planned this, but I knew one thing for certain. She'd picked the wrong damn weekend to try a coup. By the time I hit the county line, the sheriff's department had turned my driveway into a parking lot. 2 patrol cars, 1 unmarked SUV, and a dozen people all yelling in overlapping sentences. The dash camera showed red and blue lights flickering through the trees like a Christmas display from hell. I slowed down just enough to watch another unit arrive from the opposite direction, sirens cutting out as they joined the chaos. On the feed, Karen was in full performance mode, crying, clutching her arm, gesturing dramatically toward the porch like she was describing a war crime. "They attacked us. They have weapons. They're threatening my life," she shrieked, then pointed straight at Tyler, who stood calmly on the steps, unarmed, hands visible. The senior deputy, a broad man with mirrored sunglasses and the patience of a monk, held up his hand for silence. "Ma'am, please step back." Karen ignored him completely. "Those men are dangerous. They're part of a militia. They belong to the man who lives here. He's a criminal." The deputy turned to her, slow and deliberate. "Ma'am, step back." It was almost funny watching her try to override a law enforcement officer like she ran the precinct. She finally took a dramatic step away, muttering something about public duty and community authority. Meanwhile, another officer approached the porch, palm up, eyes calm. "Sir, we've had reports of a disturbance. Are you armed?" "No, sir," Tyler said. "Neither am I, nor are any of my guests. We were defending private property from a group attempting to force entry under false pretenses. Everything's recorded." "Anyone injured?" "Not on our side." He motioned toward the lawn where one HOA enforcer was still lying flat, pretending to be unconscious. "Maybe they pulled a muscle." The deputy sighed and radioed something I couldn't hear. Then he waved to another unit to separate the groups. 2 officers took statements from the HOA crowd while one stayed with Tyler and the guys on the porch. Karen wouldn't stop pacing. She kept clutching the megaphone, switching between tears and fury like someone flipping channels. I could almost hear her inner monologue. How dare they not arrest anyone immediately? One of the deputies crouched near the broken gate, examining the bolt cutters still hanging from the latch. He looked up at Tyler. "These yours?" Tyler laughed. "No, sir. We actually use tools with serial numbers." That got a small smile from the deputy, but it faded fast as he turned to Karen. "Ma'am, you said you had legal authority to be here. Can I see the paperwork?" Karen straightened her blouse, clearly unprepared for that question. "Of course," she snapped, reaching into her oversized purse and pulling out a handful of papers stapled together like a 6th grader's science project. "Here, a certified enforcement order signed by me, the HOA president." The deputy took one look, frowned, and said, "This isn't from the county. It's from the Homeowners Association," she said, as if that carried divine weight. "Right, so. Not a court-issued document." Karen blinked. It's binding under community bylaws." The deputy folded the papers and handed them back. "Ma'am, those bylaws don't extend past your subdivision's recorded boundaries. This property is outside that jurisdiction." The look on her face was pure disbelief. She tried to rally. "That's impossible. The maps are wrong," Tyler said. "And I have the county plat right inside. You're welcome to verify." Karen spun toward him like a snake ready to strike. "You stay quiet. You assaulted my officers." One of the officers on the ground groaned. "Yeah, they jumped us." The deputy turned back to him. "You work for a licensed security company?" The man hesitated. We're community enforcement." "So, no?" The deputy wrote something in his notebook. I could practically hear the pen scratching through the microphone. Finally, the scene began to calm. The police collected IDs, photographed the damage, and separated witnesses. Karen was still talking, faster now, weaving lies into new shapes. "They dragged me. They ripped the megaphone out of my hands. They threatened to shoot us." Tyler simply crossed his arms. "Sir," he said to the lead deputy, "we have multiple cameras with full audio. I can play them for you right now." The deputy nodded. "Please do." Tyler led him inside, and the camera feed switched to the entry hall. The deputy watched the first few minutes. Karen shouting, the fake security team breaking the gate, the failed attacks. He didn't say much, just kept rewinding and pausing. Then he exhaled through his nose and said, "Well, that's clear." Outside, Karen was still giving her best Oscar speech when two officers approached and quietly asked her to lower her voice. One of them glanced toward his partner and said, "We'll need to make a report, ma'am. You can file a complaint, but at this point, this looks like a civil trespass matter." Karen's voice cracked into a shrill pitch. "Civil? They assaulted me. They're terrorists." The deputy shrugged. "You can tell it to the county attorney if you want to press charges, but right now, nobody's being arrested." The crowd started to murmur. People shuffled awkwardly back toward their cars. The two enforcers got up and dusted themselves off, pretending nothing had happened. Tyler stood at the porch railing, silent. Luis gave him a small smirk. "De-escalation achieved," he said. Karen wasn't finished. As the police wrapped up, she stormed back to the deputies, voice trembling with rage. "I want their names, all of them. I'm filing for assault and unlawful imprisonment." "Sure," the deputy said. "You can do that at the county office." And with that, the officers left, leaving behind a shattered gate, a trampled lawn, and one HOA president trembling with humiliation, but already scheming her next move. As I drove the final miles home, I called Tyler. "Everyone okay?" "Fine," he said. "No one hurt. No damage except your gate and a few egos." "Karen still there?" "She's sitting in her car on the road, talking on the phone. Judging by her face, she's calling lawyers." "Of course she is." I gripped the wheel a little tighter. "Keep everything backed up. Don't touch the scene. I'll be there in 40. Because if I knew Karen, and God help me, I did, this was just the first round." I pulled up to the house just before 6 in the evening, gravel crunching under my tires as I slowed to a crawl. The patrol units were gone, but the damage was clear. My side gate hung crooked on a single hinge, the lock torn off and left in the dirt like a pulled tooth. The yard looked like a failed cult parade had marched through it. Trampled grass, broken garden lights, and a stray folding chair someone apparently left behind during the retreat. Karen's SUV sat idling across the street, hazard lights on like she was waiting for a sign from God or a subpoena. I parked and stepped out, locking eyes with her through the windshield. She didn't blink, just stared. Phone pressed to her ear, probably her 5th call to an attorney in the last hour. Tyler met me at the porch. He looked exactly how I expected, calm, composed, but with that military alertness humming just beneath the surface. He offered a nod. "Got everything recorded," he said. "Backed up on 3 clouds and 2 physical drives. I even uploaded 1 copy to that encrypted server you like so much." "Good man," I muttered, patting his shoulder as we walked inside. The house smelled like coffee and frustration. Jason and Luis were still there, going through footage, tagging timestamps. Marcus had already left to catch a late flight. His specialty was disappearing before the paperwork started. "You want to see it all?" Tyler asked, pulling up the feeds on the main screen in my office. "I want every second," I said, sitting down and opening a folder I'd prepped weeks ago, just in case this day ever came. Inside, deed copies, the official survey from the county clerk, a notarized letter from the zoning office, and a printed screenshot of the county GIS map. with my property clearly outlined outside of the Harbor Pines HOA boundary. We watched it together, from Karen's first megaphone shriek to her little mall cops trying to breach the gate, to the sad choreography of her rolling on the grass pretending to have a seizure. Every angle, every lie. Tyler fast-forwarded to one of the most damning moments, the microphone feed at the front gate. Karen's voice was crystal clear. "He won't listen, then we'll go in and take it. I don't care if he's home or not. We have security. This house belongs to the community now." I paused the video. "She actually said it," I muttered. "Jesus." She said it like she was expropriating Cuba. "There's more," Tyler said. He switched to audio from the porch cam. A different moment. 15 minutes later, Karen speaking to one of her enforcers. "If he's not paying HOA dues, he doesn't get the protection. We'll remove him, with or without his consent." That was it. That was conspiracy to commit trespass. Hell, maybe even attempted seizure of property under color of law. I sat back and exhaled slowly. "All right," I said. "She wanted a war. She's getting one." Within the hour, I had my property attorney, Leanna Carter, on the phone. She'd handled the last couple of HOA skirmishes for me, but even she sounded surprised when I described the escalation. "They entered the property," she said sharply. "Physically? And tried to enforce fake bylaws? Yep. They break anything. Gates busted. No other damage, but we've got clear footage of a guy swinging a baton at my brother. Another one tried zip-tying Luis. And you've got all of this recorded, every inch, from 5 angles, with audio." There was a pause. "I hope Karen likes courtrooms," she said, "because we're about to camp in one." Over the next 2 hours, Liana walked me through the first wave of filings. A criminal complaint against Karen and the 2 security personnel for unlawful entry, attempted assault, and impersonation of law enforcement. A formal report to the Virginia Department of Criminal Justice Services noting that the so-called community enforcement team was operating without licenses, badges, insurance, or even a business registration. A civil tort notice against the Harbor Pines HOA for attempted encroachment, false claims of jurisdiction, and damages to property and reputation. And the big one, a notice of intent to sue for conspiracy to commit unlawful seizure of property under state code. But that wasn't all. Luis, bless him, had gone the extra mile. While combing social media, he found Karen's public Facebook page, open, unprotected, and full of delusion. Just 2 hours earlier, she'd uploaded a live video titled "Taking Back the Neighborhood, HOA Enforcement in Action." And there she was, smiling, gesturing toward my house, saying, "On camera, today we're making an example out of a stubborn homeowner who refuses to respect community standards. He's been warned, and now it's time to act. We're here to make sure people understand HOA rules apply, whether they like it or not." It was a gold mine. She'd just filmed her own conspiracy confession. I downloaded the video, time-stamped it, backed it up. Tyler laughed from the kitchen. "She gave us the rope," he said. "Now we just wait for the noose." By 10 o'clock, the neighborhood had gone quiet. Karen's SUV finally drove off, her taillights vanishing like a retreating villain at the end of Act 1. I stood at the front gate, looking at the broken latch, and ran my fingers along the cracked paint. No major damage, just a warning shot. But I wasn't going to let her reload. I turned to Tyler, who had a fresh beer in one hand and the same calm look on his face he wore during deployments. "She's going to come at us hard," I said. He nodded. "And we'll hit harder." We clinked bottles. Then I went back inside and started writing up my own formal statement for the county prosecutor. Tomorrow, I would go on the offensive. No more warnings. I barely slept. By morning, I was already on the road to the county clerk's office with 2 thick folders in my passenger seat, stuffed with everything Liana told me to bring. Copies of the deed, photos of the damage, sworn witness statements from Tyler, Luis, and Jason, plus 3 USB drives containing high-definition video and audio of the entire incident. The clerk recognized me. She should. This wasn't my first rodeo with HOA lunacy, but this time felt different. This wasn't just some overreaching newsletter about lawn height or a fake fine over my flagpole. This was a full-blown attempt at property seizure. I filed the criminal complaint in person, naming Karen Grabe, 2 of her guards, still waiting to ID the rest, and the HOA Board of Harbor Pines as co-conspirators. Then I filed a formal report with the State Licensing Division for unauthorized private security operations. The lady behind the desk actually blinked at the stack of evidence. "None of these guys are licensed?" she asked, flipping through the blurry screenshots of men holding batons. "Not a single one," I said, "and I have footage of them saying they were acting under HOA authority." Her lips tightened. "That's going to be a problem. For them." I smiled, signed the last page, and got in my truck. Back at the house, Tyler was on the porch sipping coffee like he was back on a base in Helmand, boots kicked up, sunglasses on. "She's moving," he said, nodding toward the hill. I looked up. Karen's property sat higher than mine, a McMansion overlooking the ridge with an obnoxious faux Greek portico and a flag she'd replaced 3 times since 2020, depending on which political stunt she was supporting that week. But now there was movement, a tent being set up near her front gate, a folding table, people gathering. "What the hell is that?" I muttered. "Looks like a press stunt," Tyler said, "or a town meeting." Sure enough, by noon, Karen had assembled a small crowd at the edge of her property. She wore a blazer and sunglasses like she was auditioning for a Netflix true crime doc and was giving a speech through the same damn megaphone she'd used during the attack. "We are taking a stand," she declared, loud enough to be heard across the block, "against uncooperative, lawless individuals who undermine the unity and aesthetic integrity of our community." Unity, aesthetic integrity. Jesus Christ. And then came the kicker. She pulled out a piece of paper and held it in the air. "This is a motion to condemn the property located at 3477 Ridgeline Drive. The Harbor Pines Homeowners Association has voted to formally pursue eminent domain proceedings under regional community enhancement statutes." Tyler laughed so hard he nearly spilled his coffee. I stood frozen, jaw tight. "She doesn't have the power to do that," I said. "That's not how eminent domain works. She's not the government. She's a glorified HOA president in a $12 pantsuit from Ross." "Still," Tyler replied, already on his phone, "we should probably get ahead of this in the court of public opinion." We didn't have to wait long. That afternoon, I got a visit from a local reporter. Young guy, eager, probably still living off unpaid internships. He'd seen Karen's live stream. She'd tagged the HOA, the county board, even the sheriff's office. And now the rumor mill was spinning. "So, you're being condemned?" he asked, looking over his notes like he'd misread something. "No," I said flatly. "I'm being harassed." We sat down and I walked him through everything. The history with Karen, the HOA's obsession with expansion, the illegal security goons, the fake ordinance threats. I even gave him access to the footage. I could see the story writing itself in his eyes. By sunset, the article was live. "Private citizen targeted by rogue HOA, assault lies and a war for property rights." The comment section blew up. Turns out, people hate HOAs. But Karen wasn't done. The very next day, I received a formal document slid under my front door in a red envelope. It looked official, stamped, signed. It claimed I was being fined $12,000 by the Harbor Pines HOA for unauthorized defensive actions, physical harm to community officers, emotional distress inflicted on the HOA president, unauthorized use of surveillance equipment without disclosure to the community board. It ended with a threat. If the fine wasn't paid within 10 business days, I would face a lien on the property and forcible removal proceedings. Tyler read it twice, then held it up to the light. "It's fake," he said. "Badly formatted. The font changes halfway through. And they used Microsoft Word's default template. Still, I scanned it, sent it to Liana, and drove straight to the county recorder's office to preemptively file a fraud alert on my parcel ID, just in case they tried anything sleazy in the system. Liana called me back an hour later. "That document," she said, "violates 5 separate statutes. I'm adding forgery, mail fraud, and attempted civil extortion to the suit." I felt something shift then. The balance of power. For once, I was holding the flamethrower. By the end of the week, Karen was served with papers. Real ones, signed by a judge, listing everything we were hitting her with. Trespass, assault conspiracy, attempted fraudulent seizure, impersonation of authority, defamation, and filing falsified documents with intent to mislead. The HOA board received theirs the same afternoon. The sheriff personally delivered them. Apparently, he'd seen the footage, said it reminded him of a bad amateur militia movie. And yet, even then, with the law turning against her, Karen smiled when we passed each other that night outside the courthouse. That smug, confident little grin. She whispered, "This isn't over." I looked her dead in the eye and said, "You're right. It's just beginning." By Monday morning, the temperature outside had dropped, but the tension had risen tenfold. My phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Calls from news outlets, HOA victims across the state, even a law firm in D.C. offering strategic amicus support in case my suit went federal. I ignored most of it. I had one priority now: getting this mess before a judge. Liana moved fast. She'd filed a temporary restraining order against both Karen and the Harbor Pines HOA, including a motion for an emergency hearing. She argued that the HOA's actions, particularly the fake fine and attempted seizure, posed an immediate threat to my legal rights and personal safety. The judge agreed. We had a hearing scheduled for Wednesday at 10 a.m. When I pulled up to the county courthouse, the lot was half full of reporters and a few quiet supporters holding handmade signs. Property rights matter. HOA tyranny ends here. Private land, public fight. Tyler parked beside me in his dusty Jeep and hopped out in a Blazer that looked like it hadn't seen the light of day since Afghanistan. Luis and Jason came too, freshly shaved and dressed like veterans who meant business. Karen arrived 20 minutes late, of course. She stepped out of a black Escalade surrounded by 3 new guards in matching polo shirts and earpieces, none of them licensed, I'd later find out. She waved to the cameras like she was the damn mayor. Inside the courtroom, the air was thick. The judge, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s named Judge Harwell, called things to order and asked us to proceed. Liana opened like a scalpel, clear, sharp, calm. "We are seeking emergency relief," she said, "to prevent further harassment, trespass, or unlawful claims upon Mr. Haggerton's property by individuals who not only lack jurisdiction, but have attempted to fabricate it through forged documents and organized coercion." She presented exhibits, photos, video stills, the red envelope letter. Then came the footage. 2 flat screens rolled back, revealing side-by-side angles, the locked gate, the mob, the so-called guards snapping the side latch. Audio kicked in, Karen's voice over the megaphone, barking demands. When the part came where Tyler stepped onto the porch and calmly declared, "You're committing a federal crime," the courtroom went silent. A few gasps broke out when one of the guards shoved toward the door and then got swiftly disarmed and restrained. Karen shifted in her seat, visibly sweating now. Then Liana played the crown jewel, the night vision footage from my attic camera, complete with audio, capturing Karen laughing with her fake security team and saying, "If he doesn't answer, we break the damn door. HOA doesn't wait on freeloaders." That wasn't ambition. That was conspiracy. The judge raised an eyebrow, looked over her glasses, and asked Karen's lawyer if he had a response. He stood up, shuffled some papers, and mumbled, "We believe the footage lacks context, Your Honor." "Context?" the judge snapped. "It's in 4K. Karen's team fumbled through a defense, claimed the guards were volunteers, that Karen had authority under an expanded jurisdiction policy passed in 2019. The judge asked for the charter. They didn't have one, because it didn't exist. Then came the cherry on top. Liana called Tyler to the stand. He was poised, respectful, and gave a precise breakdown of the timeline, what they saw on the cameras, and how they responded with minimum force. He never bragged. He never dramatized. He just told the truth, and the judge believed every word. "Mr. Haggerton," Judge Harwell finally said, turning to me, "I'm granting your restraining order. Furthermore, I am issuing an injunction against the Harbor Pines HOA. They are prohibited from issuing fines, communicating false authority, or making any further contact with you until this matter is fully resolved." Karen's face drained of color. Then, as the hearing was wrapping up, someone in the gallery stood up. It was a state investigator from the Department of Consumer Protection who'd quietly been reviewing my complaint about the HOA's private security claims. She handed a sealed packet to the bailiff and requested to enter it into the record. Inside, evidence that Karen had forged a licensing certificate for her HOA officers by editing a state document in Photoshop. It even had a mismatched font. Idiot. That was enough for the judge to order immediate criminal investigation into Karen's actions. Outside the courthouse, cameras were waiting. I didn't want to speak, but Liana said, "You're winning the legal war. Might as well win the narrative, too." I stepped up to the mic, looked straight into the camera, and said, "Today's ruling wasn't just about me. It's about standing up to unlawful power grabs disguised as community management. If you think you're untouchable behind a fake badge and a loud megaphone, think again. The footage aired that night on 3 networks. By morning, Karen was trending on local Twitter under the hashtag #Karen of Harbor Pines. By Thursday, things moved fast. Karen wasn't just facing a court injunction. Now she was under criminal investigation. News vans parked daily near Harbor Pines, and neighbors began whispering about the HOA president with a fake security force. I didn't have time to gloat. Liana had filed the main civil suit: trespassing, defamation, attempted property seizure, and emotional distress. Damages: $630,000. Tyler's friend Luis, the recon specialist, handed over his final gift: a download of Karen's private Facebook group, True Patriots of Harbor Pines. It was a gold mine. Posts of her bragging about reclaiming rogue houses, calling herself the last line of defense. One video even showed her pointing at my house, saying, "It'll be ours by winter." We submitted all of it. That evening, a county sheriff and 2 state agents arrived at Karen's home. She came to the door in silk pajamas and tried to slam it. Didn't work. They had a warrant. The next morning, she was booked. Charges: conspiracy, falsifying documents, harassment, impersonation of a public officer, and incitement to violence. 2 of her guards had already flipped. One admitted Karen paid them cash under the table to intimidate me. The HOA board, now in disarray, voted to suspend all operations indefinitely. At sunset, I stood on my porch with Tyler and watched as a crew arrived to remove the fake security booth Karen had installed on the shared road. I raised a beer, nodded to the deputy, and said, "Finally." But it wasn't over. 3 months later, the courtroom was packed for the final hearing. Karen, now pale and much quieter, sat flanked by her new public defender. Her Escalade had been repossessed. Her house was under lien. She barely looked up as the judge listed the final charges: felony trespass, falsifying public documents, inciting violence, impersonating law enforcement, and conspiracy to commit fraud. The sentence? 9 years, with no parole before year 6. Her voice cracked when she tried to protest, claiming it was all misunderstood civic duty. The judge didn't even blink. "You tried to run a private militia and steal a house," she said. "That's not civic. That's criminal." As for the HOA, Harbor Pines was formally dissolved by court order. The board's bank accounts were frozen. A class action lawsuit was forming from other residents who had also been bullied, fined, or stalked under Karen's expanded jurisdiction. I wasn't the only one. Our case closed with a civil ruling in my favor. The court awarded full damages: $630,000 plus public retraction notices in local papers and a cease and desist order against any future HOA attempts on my land. Tyler got a nod from the judge for exemplary restraint. I nearly laughed out loud. A month later, I used part of the payout to rebuild the fence, fix the gates, and install real lighting around the property. But my favorite addition was the new sign I had custom made and bolted into iron posts right near the driveway. Private property, HOA free zone. Trespassers will face the Marines within days. The sign went viral. Some veteran blog picked it up, and then the story made national news. I got emails from strangers, landowners, even former HOA presidents thanking me for putting a boot down. I didn't answer most of them. I wasn't a hero. I just wanted peace. And now, finally, I had it.